Hey, Alina, you've been a strategy consultant, or now you're a senior strategy consultant at EY for almost 3 years. You actually started interning as a journalist initially, which it's very interesting, but now you also published a novel in April of last year. So you have quite a diverse background at a very young age. So that's what I want to talk to you about because I don't think many consultants have that diverse background. But let's start at the very beginning. So that was something when I scrolled through your LinkedIn that immediately popped to mind. You studied economics, but you actually interned as a journalist. How did that happen?
Yeah, super interesting topic. I'm very happy to be here. And yeah, the two worlds where I'm jumping around since some years now. And I think I have to start a little earlier in explaining because I started international business studies and I get bored very fast. So after quite a while, I thought, okay, if this is everything, that might get a little boring after some years.
Hmm.
All my colleagues were like going back and forth in consulting internships, and that was not so interesting for me. So I thought, okay, I like to write, and also at that time I was writing a lot, but only for me. And yeah, let's try out some journalism, some internships in the newspaper area, also in the Austrian Broadcasting Society, the OF.
Hmm.
And yeah, it was quite funny, and it was a complete different group of people. It were so new perspectives, also looking on the business world from the journalist perspective was also
Hmm.
very different. So yeah, that was my starting point with journalism. But still, I also liked what we learned. And even though I did some economics masters afterwards, because only business was then a little bit still too narrow for me.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I still decided to go into consulting because it offered this huge variety. That was actually the thing that then at last got me and took me in.
Just took you in. So you like the variety, you like the creativity in a way. So you then started EY. So why did you decide then to go to a big five, one of the big five? Was it a conscious decision or was it just one of the decisions that just happened?
Yeah, it was more like a decision that just happens. It was actually the human aspect, I think, that brought me there because I was at such a career breakfast and I met two of my colleagues right now, two young female consultants actually, and they
Hmm.
told about this special niche because we also have a very intense sector focus on public nonprofit and healthcare organizations,
Hmm.
which is small, I would say, compared to other consulting firms. Or that's only the area where I am working in.
Hmm.
And that was triggering me because I also like this value add that you somehow have if how I get it work for the public and the nonprofit health organizations.
Yeah.
So that's the point where I thought, okay, that might be interesting. And it was that I like the people and I was triggered by, as I said earlier, the variety. Okay, come to us, you get new projects every third
Yeah.
month, new people, new companies. That
Hmm.
was the interesting fact. Yeah, very diverse, even still in my area. I've done a lot from, I don't know, doing designing strategies for small nonprofit organizations, international organizations in the social area, but also working on balanced scorecards for huge Austrian cultural institutions, for example, which was a complete different form of working. And what we also did a lot is consulting the huge healthcare providers, which is again a very different area. But as you're also in the consulting business, I think you know that with each client comes different challenges, and there's also each area very different. But it's super challenging and super interesting, I would say.
It's a very steep learning curve for sure. Absolutely. Then at some point you started, like, you had thought, I want to write a book, I want to publish something. And of course, you have the background in publishing also, but the cliche, of course, being in a big five consultancy is that you're already working 90 hours a week. You skip breakfast and you stay in the office very late. So what triggered you then actually to also write a book? Walk me through that.
I started writing early. I did it all the time, also next to my studies. And I also finished my first book before I went into consulting. But then I got a publishing house. Then I had to go over and over it again while I was working. And that was very challenging because I think I'm not this romantic kind of writer that people might have in mind because I'm also this consultant person in me. I'm very structured. So also when I'm writing, I'm plotting the thing I'm going to write. I have a nice Excel sheet where I've written down everything, how the characters will interact and who comes to the stage when and what will happen. Also to get an overview of all of the stuff.
An Excel sheet. Wow.
And also there's some interconnection between both worlds. Yeah. And so for me, a little bit the problem is that my creative phase is actually from 8 o'clock in the morning to 12 a.m. That's the downside because that's also the one of the most important times where we do business. So
Mhm.
um, uh, when I come home in the evening, I'm not anymore able to
Yeah.
sit down and have these super creative moments. That
Yeah.
happens very rarely.
Yeah.
So yeah, I try to separate it, work on weekends, but also the cool thing in consulting is that we use months of leave to go in for the next stories for the next book.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I read this article once about Dan Brown, the best-selling author who wrote all these Illuminati, yeah, huge bestsellers. And I think he once talked about how when he wrote his first book, he was actually a teacher and he started writing just before his kids would get up. So he would really get up really early in the morning. I think it was like 4 o'clock in the morning and actually do his writing very early before he would actually anyone else get up in the silent morning hours. So that's another coping strategy. But that's not
Yeah.
yours.
You have so much power or energy, cool. But for me, it's still limited. So I have to plan it
Yeah.
accordingly to get all out of it.
Yeah. And the publishing, so you had, of course, some connections in publishing, but did that help you, or how did you actually get published? Because I know from experience that writing the book is the one thing, but then what most people underestimate is actually getting it published.
I think I just was lucky. I have a very cool publishing house. It's an Austrian publishing house, and they're quite young. And
Mhm.
I met them on a book, how do you say, mess,
Like a fair, yeah.
book fair. And we just talked and I gave them my manuscript and then it worked out. But I think it was like, I was just really lucky. And it was a good time for this topic. And yeah, I was so happy that they published it. And yeah, then everything only started. So we had to go over this from the
Mhm.
first, the last sentence, which was very tiring. It's like writing your master thesis.
Most people already, yeah, are done after one master thesis or half of one, and will tell you like a long time after the master thesis over how much work that was. So writing it 3 times, I can only imagine how much that was. Probably felt like it must have felt like a PhD.
Oh, I would not go that far, but yeah, maybe.
But when you actually published it in April, then you were already working at EY. So how did your colleagues actually react to you publishing the book? Did you tell them about it, or was it kind of like a dirty little secret?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because at first I was very shy with the topic because I was not even sure if people, how they would react and how readers would react. And yeah, of course, there's this self doubt that you think, okay, maybe people say it's complete shit I've ever read. But then I found out that there was also a very positive vibe. And I talked, of course, to my leaders because we have a very good connection and they
Hmm.
were all very positive. And somehow I think they also liked that they have people with diverse hobbies in their
Hmm.
teams. I experienced it as very people being very valuable and about that. But my first fear was that they say, okay, can you be a real consultant when you're also doing art at the side?
Exactly. Yeah.
Maybe eating up the other. But it worked out well. So there was a lot of uh,
Yeah.
agreement and it was fine.
It's funny that you mentioned that it's like doing art on the side because I don't think many people would question it if you would sell artwork or paintings in your free time. But when you're writing a book, people think, oh, writing a book that's work, but painting is not work. So it's interesting comparison actually to make.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
And now we've talked about how your work has influenced the book, but what I actually want to also dial into is how your book or your hobbies, it's a hobby, it's a bit more than just a hobby, but how does that influence your work? Because I see you're doing, yeah, just design thinking workshops, probably, yeah, very creative strategy sessions. But how much does that influence, like, or how much has your process of writing the book actually influenced your work?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a tough one. I think it's very hard to separate in how far it really had an effect on my work, on my projects, or it has. I think like very obviously, of course, I think I am faster or find it easy to do all the things with writing and
Hmm.
bringing in a point maybe. And that's one thing. But the creative approach, I think that I got out of the writing or of writing processes helps me to see some solution paths, maybe a little bit different, not all the time the very straightforward way, maybe going a little bit back and forth and around and still finding some solution, maybe a different one. But yeah, maybe that's the case. But for me, it's very hard to say, okay, that was influenced by that. But I think sometimes That's creativity in general. I think not only writers' creativity, going to a solution, not in the most conventional way, but also finding some small, narrow paths around and also finding an interesting solution
Mhm.
might be not so conventional.
Yeah. Are there other people like you out there, or does it feel lonely sometimes?
Yeah, I would say it feels lonely sometimes. I think all the people I find it super cool and interesting, but I don't know many people like really in consulting doing intense hobby like that at the side, or I don't want to degrade it to hobby, but doing things at the side. Many do sports or other
Mhm.
interesting things, but or building up startups. That's the one thing I think many do.
Yeah.
I don't know others, but my sphere is also not that big, so I don't know. For sure, there are many out there.
Yeah. But your team itself is rather mixed. You already mentioned it's quite a young, diverse team also. But when you look at you and your colleagues, does it feel like there's a different generation that you're from? Is that why you have these two things going on, these two hearts in your chest?
Well, I would not go that far and say there is already this new generation coming in with a lot of interest and a lot of diverse backgrounds. I still have the feeling that many of my colleagues, which I really value and think they do very good work, have still this very common path. So they did like everything to get into consulting and now they're very happy here and they're doing a perfect job going this conventional way. I would not say there are many with a different background. There are some who like went around a little bit, but I cannot see a real change in the generation. I think there are some conditions changing, which people want to change, like the flexibility of working times and stuff like that. But still, I think people in consulting, it's a certain group of people who still aim there and want to do this work and also put in a lot to do this work, as we all know. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And if you're so let's dive a bit into your skill set as a writer, because of course, writing is a very broad term. We have academic writing, we have business writing, and we have writing novel. But if you're writing, let's say you're writing project briefs, you are writing summaries for your clients. Does that process of writing? It's a very different process of writing. It's difficult sometimes because you have this the creative mind in your heart, and you have this creative mind in your heart, but you have this creative soul in you. At the same time, then you have to write these really business-driven documents. Is that difficult for you?
No, it's not. Like I learned it in university and I have done so many of them. It's okay. It's just not super funny. But sometimes I would like to, I really like also in my books, there is a lot of metaphors. I really
Mhm.
like to think in pictures and put them down to make complex things, abstract things more touchable.
Mhm.
And sometimes also in business, there are possibilities to put in some good metaphor, but then I'm super happy if there's a possibility to bring in one. But that's rare. I would say most of the time it's very clean and as it has to be done. Yeah.
Yeah,
To make it very comprehensive for the client, which is the most important thing, of course.
yeah, yeah.
We de-romanticized here, I think.
Yeah, so you can still bring a bit of yourself also into your day-to-day work. Talking about being yourself. So one thing that in the conversations that I have with consultants, so a lot of people I talk to are consultants. They might that want to move to a freelance career. They want to move to a more flexible way of working. And one of the things I hear the most is that they want to be more themselves. So they want to get out of the hamster wheel that consulting often can be, or working in the finance industry that can be. What would you recommend if someone doesn't have the opportunity to get out yet? Because you seem to have it together right now. You seem to be combining those two worlds very well, which is a very rare trait. And nobody knows what the future brings, of course. But what helps you bring those two worlds together and be yourself?
So maybe I'm not sure if it counts for all, but I think in our company, like working with the big four EY Parthenon thingy, we have a little bit a different approach. So I already have the feeling we are not so much in this wheel. We have a little bit more flexibility, as I hear from colleagues in other branches, in other companies.
Yeah.
Um, so I already have the feeling that the working culture here is healthier, if I'm allowed to put it like that.
Mhm.
And I have the feeling many of my colleagues are feeling that they are more or less on their way to be themselves. However, as the fluctuation rates, we also have them show they are not super happy, maybe. Yeah, to come back to your question, I think we are all in this disaster, more or less, our generation, finding this purpose, so much cited purpose. And I think sometimes it's just so hard to find if you are behind the Excel sheet for 3 weeks in a row. And that's what I meant earlier. I think in our team, we have a lot of exposure that's
Mm.
associated with the big four all the time. But I think that's one of the most valuable experiences I've had in consulting because I've met so many interesting clients and have done so many workshops from day one on. So I barely spent 1 week behind the Excel sheet. So even more, I'm spending it when I'm doing writing to get all my plot and structures together. Yeah. So actually, I don't really have a good idea for them. I think just finding out what you burn for, as everyone says, and to try to go into this direction. Maybe sometimes it's not so cool, it's not so well paid, and there's not so much status behind it.
Mm.
I think people in consulting still think that's what is the most achievable thing in the world. And I think if you are able to live that, you are even more open to trust what you are interested in and go for whatever crazy idea you want, even if it's just not crazy at all. And you go to the client side and work there in a very um, clear position with not so much crazy stuff around it. Yeah, but super hard. I think it's in very
Yeah.
individual.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
Mm. Are you already writing your next book?
Yeah, I'm currently working on the second one or on the third, basically, because I did the small one this summer.
Yeah.
But right now, I'm like next week I will start the writing. Until now, I've done the research and the interviews and my Excel. And yeah, next week with October, I will start like really bringing it down and making the story go.
What can we expect from your next publication?
Yeah, so I have to leave the expectations very low. No, I'm working on a complete different topic right now. It's like the first book was a lot about our generation. Actually, the thing we talked before, finding purpose, finding the good life, going on a trip, finding out what can the good life. So it was a lot about reflection and talking to people in our age and just feeling and seeing and like catching a little bit the zeitgeist. I think it's also
Mm.
interesting. And the next thing is a topic which I personally am very interested in. It's actually not so sexy, but it's care work. So I think it's very underrepresented in art. And I'm working also with as I said earlier, with the hospitals, the healthcare providers that have had a lot of interaction with people in care work and also in my personal surroundings. Many people have a care issue, I would say. Yeah, the next novel, it will be still fiction, but it will center around the person in need for care work and also portray the challenges of the 24 hours workers who come from the European East and Southeast and how that everything goes together. So also a little bit this economic view, which I really like, the macro perspective, bringing that in and combine it to a very nice story with people who laugh and have fears. And yeah,
Good luck with that. I think it's a very important topic that the world is waiting for in a way, because I think the economic view on healthcare is also really underrepresented. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what you come up with, what your research comes up with, and it's a beautiful story to also hear, because I think too few people, especially in the business and consulting world, are letting their soul do what they need to do. And it's beautiful that you give your soul some space and still follow the things and follow your dreams. Thank you so much for taking the time today, and good luck with your publication.
thank you. It was so nice to talk to you.